Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Tuesday everybody. Late last week, US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, leading a delegation of US lawmakers, left Washington for a week-long trip to several East Asian nations. In the lead-up to leaving, there was much speculation as to whether the Democrat lawmaker would visit Taiwan during this trip. If so, then it would make her the highest-ranking American politician to visit the island in 25 years. The official itinerary did not include a Taiwan leg. However, yesterday, several US media outlets began reporting that, according to sources both within the United States administration and the Taiwan administration, that Pelosi would be stopping over in Taipei. Taiwanese newspaper China Times reported that Pelosi will arrive at 10:30 p.m. Tuesday today in Taipei, 2 hours after this video goes live, and will meet with Taiwan leader Tsai Ing-wen Wednesday tomorrow before departing at 10 a.m. If the trip to Taiwan does indeed go ahead, this week will be a tense and dangerous time, with military confrontation between the United States and China not out of the realm of possibilities. Beijing has hyped its threats to a fever pitch, both internationally and especially domestically, in recent weeks. This is very much in contrast with the little attention that delegations of lawmakers from the European Union and Japan who visited Taiwan in recent weeks received from Beijing. Yesterday, China's military and foreign ministry repeated threats of, quote, strong and resolute countermeasures, end quote, against the US if Pelosi follows through with the visit. Late Monday evening, the Eastern Theater Command of the Chinese People's Liberation Army posted on its official social media accounts that it was, quote, ready for battle and fight on command, end quote. Tuesday afternoon, Beijing time, several Chinese warplanes are reported to have flown close to the medium line dividing the Taiwan Strait, with several Chinese warships not too far away. The foreign ministry also repeated warnings to the US to not cross what Beijing considers a red line, with PRC Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian expressing, quote, we would like to warn the US side again that China is standing by, and the Chinese People's Liberation Army will not sit by idly. As for what we will do if she dares to go, well, you'll see what happens, end quote. Chinese social media platforms were awash with ultra-patriotic and nationalistic posts both yesterday and today. In such a sensitive year for the party and she personally, to make such a display of threats only to do nothing of substance when Pelosi visits would be a massive loss of face, perhaps even putting a dent into their legitimacy. However, there is not much of substance that Beijing can do to prevent Pelosi landing in Taiwan outside of military options, which carries a very high risk of uncontrollable escalation. In such a fevered environment too, there is also a danger that an actor or actors in the PRC chain of command, from senior officials in Beijing to People's Liberation Army Air Force pilots, could act recklessly, risking unintended actions. The US is also in a tricky situation. While going ahead with the trip carries dangers of retaliation by Beijing, not doing so would risk being seen as submitting to Chinese pressure and giving Beijing a say in how the US can engage with Taiwan. Early this morning, Beijing time, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Pelosi's visit is her decision and her right, and called on China not to escalate tensions in the event of a visit. The United States maintains that it does not support Taiwan independence, that is, de jure recognition of a largely de facto state of affairs, with Biden telling General Secretary Xi Jinping just last week over the phone that the US's version of the One China policy will remain in place. However, in the face of increased PRC pressure on the island, as well as the Russian invasion of Ukraine, several high-profile commentators inside and outside of the US government have called for the US to revise these policy positions and show more conspicuous support for Taiwan. However, even pro-Taiwan Western commentators are divided on the wisdom of Pelosi's trip this week, coming at such a sensitive time. Quote, Though Washington has a right to try to shore up Taiwan's position and discourage Chinese aggression, the speaker's visit is ill-conceived and ill-timed. If it goes ahead, this is a moment of danger that calls for responsibility and restraint from both sides. Pelosi's visit is in danger of being seen as a grandstanding act that will incense Beijing without improving the security of Taiwan's 24 million people. End quote. We will be following these next few days very closely. Okay, next up, the economy. If you guys are enjoying the video or getting some value from the video, don't forget to hit the like button. It's a huge help. And as always, guys, anyone who wants to go the extra mile and help me keep China Update sustainable, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. As always, thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Now let's take our eyes off the mainland for a moment and examine the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. According to government estimates released yesterday, Monday, the city's economy contracted for a second consecutive quarter, declining 1.4% in Q2 year-on-year, worse than the 0.1 to 0.3% decline anticipated by economists. The SAR government expressed yesterday, Monday, that threats of inflation in the United States and Europe is expected to dampen economic growth significantly. Quote, "The city's economy has come under strain as COVID restrictions curbed business and consumer activity, while outbreaks on the mainland disrupted trade. At the same time, Hong Kong Central Bank has been forced to raise interest rates to maintain the local dollar's peg to the US dollar as the Federal Reserve jacks up rates to fight inflation." End quote. The analysts continue observing that while Hong Kong relaxed some of its social distancing and COVID restrictions in April, retail sales and exports have been slow to rebound, a sign of things to come for the mainland. Hong Kong's strict quarantine restrictions for inbound travellers continue to hurt tourism and travel and frustrate international businesses. With this disappointing performance, Hong Kong's Financial Secretary, Paul Chan, expressed that the full-year growth forecast will likely be revised down to 1 to 2%. Okay, last up, the Chinese housing crisis. We recommence our granular coverage of China's financial crisis, which continues to bleed into the real economy. The systemic nature of the crisis means that, as one issue was cut down by regulators and policymakers, new ones rear their ugly heads. Slaying this hydra will indeed demand Herculean efforts. But despite government efforts to shore up demand for housing, we learned on Sunday from domestic real estate industry consultancy China Real Estate Information Corp that housing sales in China failed to achieve a third straight month of month-on-month gains in July, and of course have crashed year-on-year. Total sales of 100 of the country's top property developers fell 28.6% in July month-on-month to 523.1 billion RMB, approximately $77.4 billion US, a deeply demoralizing backslide after a 61.2% month-on-month jump in June off a very low base the month before. Year-on-year, sales were down almost 40% in July. The report expresses that this is being driven by low market confidence, the same low market confidence which has pushed tens of thousands of homebuyers, frustrated with delays on pre-purchased homes, to boycott mortgage payments. Many analysts agree. In the second half of 2022, there is no hope for a quick rebound in the real estate sector, and it will continue to drag economic growth. The anecdote is to boost the confidence of homebuyers and developers once again, but it has proven to be a difficult task. We view this mortgage risk to be more about households' willingness rather than ability to make mortgage payments, as developers have dragged out the construction of properties given the difficulties of refinancing. These incidents will further weaken home buyers' confidence about project completions and cause them to refrain from buying pre-sold properties, especially from financially weak and privately owned property developers, if construction suspensions become more widespread. Despite massive hits to revenue, due in large part to the housing crisis, we remember that last week the Politburo ordered local governments to issue more new policies to increase housing demand in Q3 and Q4, including establishing bailout funds to get unfinished projects completed. But, as we can see, so far, households remain sitting on the sidelines, unwilling or, hurting from the lockdowns and economic slowdown, increasingly unable to engage in the housing market. Okay, that is today's episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.